So before we get into today's topic, there's a Bible passage that I think is directly relevant to this, which also happens to be my favorite. And if you'd like to follow along with me, this is Matthew 23 to 35. The parable of the unforgiving debtor. And so the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who decided to settle his accounts with his servants. When the reckoning began, they brought him a man who owed 10,000 talents. But he had no means of paying. So his master gave orders that he should be sold together with his wife and children, and all his possessions to meet the debt. At this the servant threw himself down at his master's feet. "Give me time," he said, "and I will pay the whole sum." And the servant's master felt so sorry for him that he let him go and canceled the debt. Now as the servant went out, he happened to meet a fellow servant who owed him 100 denarii. He seized him by the throat and began to throttle him. "Pay what you owe me," he said. His fellow servant fell at his feet and implored him, saying, "Give me time and I will pay you." But the other would not agree. On the contrary, he had him thrown in prison till he should pay the debt. His fellow servants were deeply distressed when they saw what had happened, and they went to their master and reported the whole affair to him. Then the master sent for him. "You wicked servant," he said, "I canceled all that debt of yours when you appealed to me. Were you not bound then to have pity on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you?" And in his anger the master handed him over to the torturers, till he shall pay all his debt. And that is how my Father will deal with you unless you each forgive your brother from your heart. And that's a parable I try to live my life by. Basically what it means is if something's doing something you don't like to you, or you're being punished for something and you think it's unjust, then you shouldn't punish someone under you in the same circumstances for the same thing. And this relates to today's topic. So we're going to talk about academic journals, reports put out by different organizations, essay writing, and literature reviews. So in my master's course at the moment, I've been asked to do a literature review and get together 15 sources. It's always difficult to do literature reviews because they're supposed to be 500 words. And if you're supposed to cite 15 sources or so, that's like one source a sentence or something. But I digress. The issue I have whenever I'm doing these or doing other essays is, for whatever reason, I find most journals don't have dates on them. Now, people might say, well, Argent, they don't have dates on the actual snippet because they have a date on the title of the journal. But the title of the journal isn't often on the the article that you download. It often doesn't have a date either. Even if you go to the portal or whatever, it'll just say this article. Maybe you'll get a journal if you're lucky, but they won't give you a date. A lot of the time there's not an author on it. So you often will get into the scenario where you find something that's directly relevant. There's no author, there's no date, there's not even the journal really listed. I don't really see what's so hard about having a header that says this journal, this issue, this date, this author. But for whatever reason, that's just too difficult. So you're stuck just having to skim through the internet, trying desperately to see maybe where someone else cited it to get the right information together for your bibliography. I find what I often try to do is I try to look through the article and find the most recent event that the article references. Like if it's an article that references something in 2020 and I can't find a date on it, I just assume it's from 2020. But it's just something that irritates me, because if you handed in a paper in a lot of cases that didn't have your name on it, that didn't have a date on it, that didn't have what class you were in, you would probably fail or get docked marks. But if you're a professional academic, you're allowed to do that. You're then allowed to go and punish your students when they do the same thing you yourself are guilty of. Another thing I find with a lot of journal articles is there's no bibliography. There will be no sources cited in the entire document, and if you go to the end, they're just not there. Maybe they're in the actual journal, but it makes you wonder, why are they cutting out journal articles? And oftentimes, I have access to them because I get them through my university, but they'll have articles that they're selling the PDF of for $100. They won't have a date, they won't have an author, they won't have a bibliography. I mean, if you tried to submit an academic paper without a bibliography or any citations, you would be crucified. Like, they would throw you into debtor's prison, they would fail you from the course, and that would be like okay though, because they can go and do that to their students, and if they even like cite something wrong or they make a grammatical error or they don't put format their bibliography properly, they will have marks deducted for that. And as bad as journals articles are, you can say, well, all that stuff would have been in the complete journal. True that they probably shouldn't be taking large articles out of it and not including the information you need. But you can kind of say that. The other issue is a lot of organizations like policy groups or think tanks or economics groups or even like the government will put out releases. So it'll be like a report that will be a standalone report, and it won't have a date on it, and it won't have an author on it, and it won't have any citations. So you'll have like this document, and once again, you're just going to have to guess like when it came out by going through and trying to see if maybe someone else cited it. And I just don't get why it's so complicated to just put a fucking date on the first page. Just say published in 2020. This is the person who compiled it. And granted, it's not like all cases or even a majority of cases, but I would say probably about 30% of the time or so, a document is missing an author or a date, and in a lot of cases, it's missing both. I also often find that in course notes where professors will give them out and there's no citations, they'll reference statistics, they'll make direct references to things. There's no citations. A lot of the time when you check the citations, they're wrong. Like, I know for most of my online, maybe not most, but probably about 40% of my online courses, the professors don't check the links that they have. So, like, half the documents that they have posted for you to read are just dead links, or they're not loaded, or they have the wrong documents up. They also, generally speaking, don't proofread the syllabus. So it's very common for them to use the syllabus from like the last semester and not update the dates on it. So no one really knows what's going on. And once again, if you did any of these things, in most cases you might fail the course. If you didn't include a bibliography, you would be kicked out of the university for academic misconduct. But if you are a professor, if you have a PhD, if you're part of the system, you can punish people for doing all these things that you yourself do not do. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in having these problems and trying to figure these things out. It's not like I'm a bad student either. I've been getting straight A's. I think I got an A in every course of my master's program. So that's 9 courses so far. So it's not as if like I'm a bad student or I'm incapable of doing these things. It's not even that I can't like find a lot of this. It's just that it's just really annoying. It really irritates me when people are hypocritical in terms of how they judge others when they're not doing something themselves, or even acknowledging it. I don't think it's hypocritical to regard something as being bad so long as you hold yourself to the same standard. Like, I don't think it's wrong to think that excessive eating and obesity is bad if you're fat, so long as you acknowledge that it's something bad and it's something you shouldn't be doing and you're just as guilty of it as other people. That's not hypocritical. But to basically say you're not like doing anything wrong, but lesser mortals are when they're doing something wrong, that just is kind of something that irritates me. And these are publicly published. Like, no one other than your prof is going to read your term paper, probably. So it's much less important that you get a lot of these things right on it. And maybe just to throw in another Argent expression here, people will like to say in situations like this, well, Argent, life isn't fair. Life isn't fair is a pathetic excuse for doing wrong. It's like a pathetic excuse for hypocrisy, for not treating other people in a dignified fashion, for just being a lazy asshole. I mean, there are a lot of things that aren't fair in the world, but that shouldn't affect your like teaching style or what you're paid to do or an industry where there are established rules. It's just kind of pathetic. So that's my rant about journal articles, about citations, about references, and about university professors. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it interesting. God bless everyone, and more content to come.